Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Oracle AI series. In today's video, I'll be taking a closer look at how you can incorporate some of the AI services that Oracle has available on OCI in your own custom software. Now this video will partially cover a bit of coding, so I'm splitting it up into two parts. In the first part, I will demonstrate the interaction with the AI Vision service in a demo application that I've built. And in the second part, I will go into detail on how this can be achieved through some programming. The second part can of course be skipped by anyone who isn't familiar with coding. Now most, if not all, of these services on OCI can be interacted with through the usage of REST APIs. The AI services are no different. It is possible to send an image to the Vision service and get a response back with the type of objects recognized and the confidence percentage per object. Now, if you want to incorporate such functionality in your own software or build something specifically for it, then there are several ways to achieve this. Depending on what coding language you are using, Oracle has specific software development kits available to make integration with the AI services relatively easy. Now, just to give you a quick demonstration of what you can achieve, in my previous video I showed you how you can interact with the Vision service on OCI, but here in my custom application I've incorporated some code which allows me to interact with it. I'm going to upload an image which I've stored on my computer, and as you can see, the result I'm getting back from the service is that it's recognized certain objects within the image with a confidence percentage. For a more complex example, I've added code which makes use of the document understanding service and more specifically the key value extraction model. This model can identify key values in documents such as invoices or receipts. For receipts, these values include details such as the merchant address, the amount of tax included, or the total amount. Now, processing a receipt through the key value extraction model will give you back this information in text format, which of course then you can easily use by your application to automate things such as expense declarations. This will no longer require anyone to type in the values from the receipt into the system. So here we are in the demo application that I've built to showcase how you can use the document understanding service in your own software to process information from a receipt. It's a very basic application, as you can see, but I'm just going to select the receipt I have stored on my computer and press the upload button. What this will do is send the receipt for processing to the document understanding service. And as you can see, the response I get back from the service includes all the information that it has detected on the receipt. Now, it was able to correctly identify the name of the merchant, the address of the merchant, but also information such as the total amount. Important to note is that I'm not including everything in the response here on the screen, but I'm limiting it to the most important information. Now from here, you can imagine it's quite easy to further process this information, either by storing it in your database or by applying some additional processing. Now onto the technical part. For anyone not interested in coding and such, this is the moment where you can skip towards the end of the video. Just a small disclaimer before I continue, the AI services are constantly being improved and updated, so any information in this video might become outdated quite quickly. Always make sure to check the current documentation from Oracle if you indeed want to start developing. Now, before you start writing your own code to perform similar actions like I did, there's a few important considerations you have to take in account. First of all, the method of integrating with AI. Now, there are APIs available and theoretically you could interact with them using your own code. However, the information required in both the request and in the response will require quite a bit of custom coding. Additionally, if the APIs are changed, then you will have to update your code. Then there's the fact that every AI service has its own set of required request data, and the data in the response will be different for each of the services. So my recommendation would be to use the software development kits that Oracle provides, which are currently available for Java, Python, TypeScript, .NET, Go, Ruby, and PL SQL. These SDKs have all the required classes and methods to take care of serialization and deserialization of requests and responses, allowing you to easily interact with the AI services. The documentation that Oracle has available on the SDKs include examples for every language and how to perform interactions with the APIs. Secondly, depending on the volume of the data you want to have analyzed, you may have to resort to implementation of asynchronous processing. Now the demo I just showed you does a basic synchronous call to the API with an inline image, but if I wanted to analyze a lot more, then I would have to create a processor job on OCI with the data I want analyzed. An important distinction here is how the data is supplied. The inline request I did includes the image in the request, But alternatively, you can upload the image to a OCI storage bucket first and then reference that object in the request. This technique has to be used when performing asynchronous processing. You will have to take care of uploading the images to a bucket first before you can start processing them. Thirdly, staying up to date. In the application I just showed, I use these software development kits like I mentioned, which is easily used through the Maven repository by adding it to your pom.xml. It's important to frequently check for updates. Oracle is heavily invested in AI, as you might know, and the AI Vision SDK, for example, has been updated quite frequently the last few months. Like I mentioned here on the slide, it was updated between 2 and 4 times a month since August last year. Finally, the monthly cost for interacting with the AI services. Now, most of the AI services are free for the first 5,000 transactions, but after that, you will have to pay a price per unit. Now, a unit is defined as 1,000 transactions, but always make sure you validate what the cost will be for using the Oracle AI service using Oracle's cost estimator, which you can find online. Now, the example I'm giving here on the slide is for usage of the Vision OCR service. If I were to exceed 5,000 transactions a month, so I would buy 6,000 transactions, this would cost me $1. Now, as for the code to perform these actions, like I did in my demo application, you can find a lot of this in the online documentation that Oracle has. This is the API reference and endpoint documentation, and I will just go into the document understanding API and drill down to analyze document. Now, there's information here on the headers and the body, but if you scroll down a bit further, you can see actual examples using the SDK. Now, I use the Java SDK, but if you want to go ahead and use any of the other SDKs, then you can just click through them and see the code that is needed to perform these actions. Now, there's a lot of information in here. What you have to use all depends on some of the considerations that I mentioned in the previous slide. If you want to do this asynchronously or synchronously, I will just show you what the code looks like in my own application because it's a lot smaller than everything which is included in here. So this is the application, more specifically the part which I wanted to highlight, which does the actual interaction with the API. As you can see, it's quite a bit smaller than the example that you saw online. What I've done, I've separated this into its separate class, where I can provide it with a byte array, which in this case would be the image that you upload, and it then sends it to the API. Now, there's 2 important parts in here. The first part is the authentication that is used to interact with the API. The documentation will explain this to you as well. The default option is having a file somewhere on your hard drive, which includes things like an API key and information on the tenant. But you can also implement custom authentication. Now, if you want to use this in a production environment, I would absolutely recommend that you build something to get this, for example, from a database. I wouldn't recommend having this on a file on the server somewhere. Now, the second part is actually interacting with the API itself. As you can see, there's a lot of parameters here. It uses a thing called builder. So this is the serialization and deserialization, like I mentioned before. I didn't have any experience with this, but it was quite easy to understand. Depending on what you're doing, you need to include certain parameters in the builder. Now, depending on what OCI service you're using, this changes, but this is all very much described in the documentation. Now, what I've done here, like I mentioned, is provide the image inline, but you can reference objects in a storage bucket as well. There's a bit of other information which you need to include, and once you've done that, you can actually build the request and then send it off to the AI service. Now, the way I've built this is that I can use this anywhere in my code. I can just supply it with an image. It will call the API and give back the response, which can then be processed in another class. And then finally showing the part where I actually call this class that I've created. As you can see, there's a bit of code here, which is triggered when you press the upload button. What it does, it saves the file to local storage, but it also calls the function, supplying it with the image, as you can see here. Then these results are processed. Now, like I already mentioned, depending on what AI service you're going to use, the response information might be different. As for document understanding, you will get back an array with pages. So the way I've done it here is I have a for loop which goes through all the pages, and for each of the pages I just pick up the values. Again, documentation describes everything which is given back in the response. I've made it very basic here. I've created my own model class which I then assign values to based on what the array contains. As for the line items, There's a field type called line item group. What I've done here specifically for the line item group, I'm assigning these to a separate list, which is then added to the model that I've created. And once that's done, I just push this into the page. So when the upload is done, it will return you to a different page where it will actually show the results. Now that we're nearing the end of this video, a few closing notes on the coding part. The documentation Oracle has available is extensive, but it does not cover every detail. Developing the demo application I just showed you did not take me a lot of time, but the majority of my time went into processing the return information. You have to filter out what is relevant to you and take it from there. Now, of course, I will include links to the documentation in the description of this video, which should provide you the guidance you need on how to use the AI services in your own software. And that was it for today's video. I hope you learned something new and more importantly can start adding some of these AI services into your own custom software. Starting small is always the best course of action when working with something new. So the examples I gave you in this video should be a great place to start. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. For now, thank you for watching and see you next time.